Hey everybody, what's up? Soccer Dad Pod. We are back. Another showtime. Joining me today, the carpool co-host of the day, is the one and only J-Rod. What's up, Mr. Bertrand?
He's here. He's made it.
Yeah, man. Flying down 44 from, what is that? Rolla? Where do you work?
No Teethville, somewhere in Franklin County.
Yeah, there's a dentist shortage, huh? Is that what you're saying? Maybe that's not the problem, but we won't go there. Sorry for all of you Franklin County listeners. We apologize. It's all in just jest, trying to be funny. We got another episode today, and today is one of those days that, here in St. Louis, for those of you that know and those of you that listen, if you're not from here, we got a long roster of names that have done it at the highest level for a long time. And today's guest is one of those it's. Really looking forward to our chat coming up here right around the corner. I'm coming in here with a little bit of camp in honor of a big old concert this weekend. At the time of this recording, yours truly and my crew got a little invite.
Where's it at?
It's at the Dome. My boys Camp, who came into Gaslight years ago, right? Go on YouTube.
They're playing the Dome?
You know who they're opening for?
No.
Zach Bryan. You ever heard of him?
Heard of him.
He's pretty big.
So is the whole crew going?
We got 5 tickets.
That's one of those things that when you have tickets for something like that, that's one of those you wake up each day, it gets one day closer. You guys have got to be excited. That's all, the whole fam's going. That's going to be a fun day.
Yeah, I'm trying to I've got time to prep because you know me, like my fanfare for humans has diminished as I've gotten older. Large crowds of people really kind of like, I don't know, I'll just say, not my thing.
You'll be medicated enough to deal with it, I think.
I'm pretty sure I will start drinking tomorrow, and the concert is Sunday night.
It's Sunday night.
What is today's date? No, Saturday. Saturday night.
Good.
Saturday night party. We've been on a little bit of a roll, kind of getting back into the groove. If you missed it, go get it. Go listen. Our last conversation with the Mr. Steve Tritshoe, World Cup alum, Granite City native, now one of the academy directors over at SLSG, St. Louis Scott Gallagher. We had just a fun conversation. The dude he knows his shit. He knows the people. He did it himself. We talked about MLS Next, what's going on, some of the showcases. And obviously we spent some time on the World Cup around the corner. Got his take, a little 101, a little analysis of the team, the players, expectations. And then a little bit of personal info from him for, it's public now. He is a cancer survivor, and he talks about what happened and encourages the testing process.
Wow.
So
he truly is one of those guys that he's got a place in my heart. I just actually like him. I like to poke him a little bit. We're 275 episodes into this thing, potentially somewhere in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. I'd like to know how many episodes that there are total that we haven't talked about Granite City.
0, dude. Look.
No, but
I mean,
GC.
I do believe I bought the mics. So he who pays the piper calls the tune.
Yeah.
A lot of things going on. Anyway, we got our guest coming up here just in a few minutes. A lot of things going on in the world of sports, soccer, etc. Points of the day. Which, by the way, let's get back to your name here.
Your name here. Yeah.
I think it's time. We've been providing a service for all of you listeners, and if you happen to be a small business owner that would like access to thousands and thousands of sucker parents just like us that spend their money on their kids and things, and you have a service or a widget or something you want to get in front of them, call us.
Well, I mean, I think the Granite City Chamber of Commerce probably should be.
They should, man. I mean, they should give us a block, key to the city or something.
So your name here, point one of the day, and for our listeners, I think they know if they're avid listeners, but we have a couple 17-year-olds, and right now, and I never do soccer for my point of the day, but I just have to get this off my chest. We are through match day 2 of the new MLS season. And my point is going to be around the New York Red Bulls. So Mr. Michael Bradley and our friend of the show, Mr. Mike Sorber, I just want to talk about what's going on there. They are 2-0. I'm going to say some names and I'm going to say some ages. Adre Mehdi, 16. Julian Hall, 17. Matthew Dos Santos, 17. Just signed a first-team contract today. Cade Cowell, 22. Ronnie Doncourt, 21. Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, 21. He's Canadian. Justin T, 22. They have 8 American starters, and everybody, for the most part, is under 25 except for the goalie who just came back. And, like, for me, and I'm going to get your full remark to it, Julian Hall's got 3 goals. He had a brace on match day 1. He scores their lone goal on match day 2. And that goal, the 3 people who touched the ball before the ball went into the net,
All the kids.
were 16, 17, and 17. And then Tanner Rossborough, who is from the Beadling MLS Next Club, who our boys have played against many, many times, great player, great kid, great family. He comes in, guess what? He's 17. So they're doing it with Americans. They're doing it with young ages. Like I'm a City ticket holder, and I'm gonna love City, and I have to. It's where I was born. New York Red Bull, I think, is my favorite team.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% with you. And I think what it does is it kind of validates a lot of the conversations and arguments and debates that we have with just people when it comes to American soccer, generally speaking. Go ahead.
By the way, those 4 teenagers, all from their academy.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, and then not to mention, so that if they were just kicking it down the field and winning the knockdowns, they're playing good football too, if you watch them.
Yeah. So here's where I'm going to go with this, and I want to get your take on this. Because our boys have played all these kids multiple times. In fact, we've come out on top in some of these games, and now those kids are playing, in the MLS first team, getting points, getting wins against, global grown men pros, right? And we've been saying for a long time that the issue isn't like that we don't have good players. We do. Technically speaking, the delta between American players in that 15 to 21, 22, 23 year range, it's 0. It's all the same players. The difference is who's putting them together. And I do think that their success right now, it's on the bench. It's Michael Bradley and it's Mike Sorber, and it's how they are treating these kids and how they're playing. So, I love the point. I'm with you. I think it's these other clubs, the other 29 clubs around the league, hey, there's a model that you can, there's a cheat code, and it's public information. Go check it out.
It's not the 3rd division of the German Bundesliga?
Oh, yeah, or Norway. Or, I'm with you.
Who would have thunk it?
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break because we've got our guest coming in here in just 2 seconds. I'm going to toss a point later in the day. Your name here, PM us. Become a friend. Like I said in a post the other day, we will send you a personally autographed by Jared Bertrand Bush hoodie, vintage, whatever size you want. Coming your way. Give us a call.
Whew, that's going to be worth something if you have to change the oil in your car in the wintertime.
I know, man. I'm telling you. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dan Counce. Until next time, which is just in a couple seconds here, thanks to post-production. Camp on the way out. See you. Hey, we're doing our friends over at PCDA solid today. If you're a family with a baller who's wanting to play beyond high school, who's maybe in a rut trying to figure out what to do, where to go, how to get there, take a second and go check out PCDA. Pre-College Development Academy is a gap year program where players can utilize the facilities, the coaching, the training, the league, the education component, competition, and the time to better prepare. Bottom line, with the college game largely getting significantly bigger, older, faster, and stronger, it might make sense to explore alternatives and use the time as an ally. Go to www.precollegeda.com for more information. Hey everybody, what's up? JB, we are back. Quick break is over. As I mentioned before the break, we brought our guest in here because today is one of those technologically enhanced conversations, which that's code for Zoom, because they're not here with us. I mean, they would prefer to be in St. Louis having a nice cold Budweiser, but sometimes we just can't get that done.
Yeah, you do what you got to do, right?
Exactly. And joining us today from the suburbs of the Mile High City itself, Denver St. Louis soccer legend, the one, the only, Dan Counce. How's it going, Dan?
I think okay.
So far,
You know,
right?
I got a good technical lesson learned here a few minutes ago, but that's all right.
Hey, the day you stop learning, what's the saying? You're dying. That's
You're dead.
There you go.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. You were actually introduced to me through text by a mutual friend of all of ours, actually, the one and only Mr. Brian Haddikin. So,
Oh yeah, Brian. Sure, I know Brian. Brian's dad played with me at St. Louis U.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We still talk every couple months. We get on the phone and yap for a while.
Well, let's yap a little bit. You're here today. You're the guest. We put a little bit of notes in the show notes here. People are gonna figure it out, but you have an incredible background, experience, resume as a player as well as in the front office. But let's again. We'd like to put a pin in the map. Let's go back in time a little bit. Sounds as if you were a Rosary kid, if I read correctly.
That's right. I'm a Northsider. Yeah, I went to Rosary High School. I went to DA, which a lot of people won't remember. DeAndre's High School, my freshman year, and then my parents moved to the suburbs, and then I went to Rosary.
So, time frame on all that is you're growing up. You're a kid, in the '60s,
Right.
high school, in the
Right.
late '60s. Soccer obviously was big in this town, had been for a long, long time. SLU was in the mix of, starting their
Right.
big runs. Not too long before, we're coming off 1950 and all the lore and everything that
Right.
brought.
Right.
For you, was soccer just a natural progression? Was it baked into your household? Was it, kids on the block? Was it the parish? What brought
Well,
you
you
to
know
the
what
game?
it was? It was in the neighborhood. Back then we used to play a lot of, we called it hock sock.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard that term,
Yep.
but we used to play in the gymnasiums, 5 against 5, 4 against 4, that kind of stuff with small goals. And so I did that in grade school. And then when I went to St. Michael the Archangel grade school. And then when I was in 6th grade, it closed. So then I had to go to Sacred Heart, which was the next parish up from there. And so when I went to Sacred Heart, they had enough. St. Mike's didn't have enough kids. You couldn't have a soccer team or baseball team or anything because we didn't have enough students. So at Sacred Heart, they had a soccer team. So when I got up there, I thought, well, that's what everybody was doing back then, was playing soccer. So I thought, well, I'm going to try to do that. So I did a lot of schoolyard soccer, and then I played on the grade school team. And fortunately, it took to it pretty easily. And then I went to DA, and DA was a pretty good soccer school at that time. And I went to DeAndre's, and as a freshman, played on the team there, and just got more and more and more, enamored with soccer. And then went to the suburbs and went to Rosary, and then I played for Dave Berwin and at St. Philip Neri Parish, and we had some good junior teams there. And then Harry Keel came to recruit, and when I was and I wanted to go to St. Louis U my whole grade school life and high school life, because when I was a kid, we used to hang out at Fairgrounds Park. And back then, St. Louis U, when Pat McBride and all those guys were playing, they used to play on soccer field number 1 in the park, and they used to put a big tarp up around the field. to kind of encase it a little bit like a little stadium,
Yeah.
if you would. And I remember they had to walk a pretty good distance from the locker rooms to the field. And St. Louis U team came out and they had all these nice uniforms on and stuff. And I thought, oh, man, I want to do that someday.
So back then, you already name dropped Pat McBride as an example. Who was maybe like your idol, or maybe an influence, or somebody, because there were so many that were in the marketplace, right? But we all of us that have played, there's always that one person that it's like, oh my God, that dude, I want to play like him. Who was that for you?
Well, I think it was probably Pat McBride was probably the one, but Carl Gentili was on that team, and there was a whole era of players at that time that kind of gathered together. There was a senior level team that was called, I think it was called White Star or Red Star. I can't remember the name of it or which one it was, but all those kind of good elite players played for that team. And most of those guys were from St. Louis U, they were all St. Louis guys that came from the CYC league. It's the same, I think pretty much the same story of anybody that grew up at that time. It was just, all we did was, at Catholic school was play soccer.
Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, and I think we're getting into that where you get the phone call. You kind of already mentioned that Mr. Keogh comes calling, or he comes recruiting.
Right.
Can you talk about, you kind of went through your your progression of the grade school and then the high school that closed and moving to the suburbs, and you just went pretty in depth about what soccer meant to you and all the kids around you. What did it mean to you and your family when SLU comes calling and you get to go ahead and ink that deal, and you already said you've been trying to go to SLU. What did it mean?
Yeah, well, it meant everything, because that's where I always wanted to go, and my parents weren't going to be able to afford the tuition. It wasn't even that expensive at that time, but they weren't going to be able to afford the tuition, so I needed to get a scholarship. So basically, I had a lot of offers of scholarships at that time from lots of, but I only was interested in St. Louis U and SIU. They were the two St. Louis kind of area teams, and I knew, Gelker, and Pat McBride was an assistant coach for Gelker at that time at SIU, and Harry and Val were at St. Louis U, and I played for Dave Berwin at St. Philip Neri in the North City team, and and a lot of those guys went to St. Louis U, so that was kind of where I wanted to go. But when it came time for the scholarship thing happening, SIU was really more keen on getting me, I think, than St. Louis U was. The SIU, they gave me full ride right away, and full tuition and all that, everything they could give a kid as a freshman coming in. SIU was offering that, and St. Louis U was offering me a partial scholarship. And I thought, shoot, I really want to go to St. Louis U, but my parents are going to have to come up with some money, and I don't know if I want them to have to do that, and all that was back and forth and back and forth, and I didn't know what to do really. And I remember calling Dave Berwin, and I said, Dave, I think I'm going to go to SIU, and he goes, oh, really? And because he I think wanted me to go to St. Louis U as well. And I said, yeah. And I told him why. I said, I don't know that they really want me that badly. And, they had already, at that time, my freshman year, I think St. Louis U brought in like 8 freshmen that year. It was Bob Madison, Denny Warner, Jim Bokern, all those guys from St. Mary's, Jim Gutman.
Yep.
And then Northside was me, Mark Demling, and Denny Hattigan. And Denny Hattigan.
That's amazing. Let me cut in right here. It's amazing when you get to that age, when you're making decisions on how the timing works. Like, you ended up there, and we'll continue on down the path, but like just little things like they had 8 guys the year before is a big deal. People don't really realize that, and not to mention it was probably a positional thing as well.
Right. Well, it was positional, and then also St. Louis U didn't even. I think St. Louis U had somewhere around 10 full scholarships.
Mm.
So that's 10 for the whole team.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, if they had 4 scholarships available, if they wanted to bring in 8 guys, they had to give them partials,
Yep.
because they didn't have enough money for them all. So I think that was part of it, but they kind of came to me a little bit later, I think, than the earlier interest that was shown by SIU. And Pat McBride, I know, visited my house, and my parents liked him, and I always liked him as a player with the Stars. I always, liked the way he played and stuff. So I called Dave Berwin, and I said, Dave, I'm going to go to SIU. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, they're not giving me a full ride, and I understand that maybe they can't, but, I can't ask my parents to pay the money and all that kind of stuff. So, we went through that, and I said, I'm calling Gelker at 8:00 tonight and tell him I'm coming. And this was probably around 7:00. My phone rang about 7:20, and it was Harry Keogh. And Harry was on the phone. He says, Dan, this is Harry Keogh. I said, hi, Harry. How you doing? He said, okay. He said, we'll give you a full ride. And then I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah, we'll give you a full scholarship. So then I said immediately, yeah, I'll take it. And I told my dad when I got on the phone, I was going to SIU, and then I told him I'm going to St. Louis U. And he says, what? And he says, and my parents never tipped their hand on where they wanted me to go. They were like leaving the decision to me, kind of.
Yeah.
And I said, well, they're going to give me a full ride, and that's where I want to go, and I'm going to go there. So then I called SIU and told them I wasn't coming, and I went to St. Louis U. And I remember my dad saying to me that the only time, and it was because I kind of pushed him, I said, well, where do you want me to go? Where did you want me to go? And he said, do you want to win, or do you want to be a place where you got really nice fields and good coaching and good camaraderie and stuff? But he said, how much do you want to win? And I said, I want to win. He said, well, then you better go to St. Louis U. So,
well,
I think there's some Illinois guys that would take some exception to that.
I love those guys.
I'm gonna move past that comment quickly.
No, I'm not. No.
No. Okay, but
So-
all those guys were my friends. I loved all those guys.
Yeah, I get it.
And I would have been great with Tommy Howe and Kevin Howe and all those guys that were over at SIU, and they had beautiful field. I mean, we were training in Forest Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, the winning part of that conversation manifested itself in real time, because in your 4 years, you walked away with 3 national championships.
Right.
Kind of part of that time frame in which the Billikens were dominating college soccer, in general.
Right.
Well, hey, let me just jump in real quick. This guy was talking about him training at Forest Park in the early 70s. I just want everybody to know, and our listeners to know, that Father Biondi had these guys training as late as the mid-90s at Forest Park when Bob Warming was there. Bob Warming's the guy that even got it on campus for them to start training.
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about how long that's been. The early 70s, you were like, we're training at Forest Park. SIU's got this big, beautiful facility. Well, and SLU did all that stuff and all that winning. They were still training at Forest Park in 1994.
Yeah. I know. Well, we trained at Forest Park, and we brought our own gear. It was like typical playing for one of the senior amateur teams.
Yeah,
we had our gym bags, our own gym bags. We didn't have St. Louis U gym bags, and we had our own gear that we wore, in practicing and training in Forest Park.
Yeah.
And we loved it, to be quite honest with you. But it was if you really wanted to be treated well, SIU was the place that had all of the amenities. They had beautiful fields, good coaching staff, good players, good environment. They had everything that a soccer player at that time wasn't used to getting.
Yeah. So you, I mean, 3 national championships, and then you also you as an individual were top of the pile. You walked away with the Hermann Trophy, and then you also walked away with the MVP of that the Senior Bowl in '73. Can you take a second and talk about the compare and contrast of, winning with your teammates and, kind of, you knew these guys, you grew up with the majority of them, right? All the names, like that's a family experience. And when you win as a family, it's one thing, but then it's a whole other thing whenever you get that phone call or you get that letter and you're told individually you are the best. Can you take a second and talk about what those two things felt like for you?
Well, like I said, I went to St. Louis U because I viewed them as like a winning program and the place that I wanted to always want. It just was from my childhood. I wanted to be there, and Harry was great and Val were great. But one thing at St. Louis U that I think really at that time set us apart was the fact that Harry and Val, they really were equipped to handle the kind of players that we had at St. Louis U. They did great recruiting. They got the best guys that they wanted, and they were great at team. I think not consciously, but at team building, and we just wanted to win. I mean, training every day was like, and often we'd play Northside against the Southside at training.
Yeah,
we played the Northside guys, we'd play the Southside guys, and we'd all be razzing each other. But we were friends, we were, to this day, all those guys. If I come back into St. Louis or come back to see a city game or something like that, I always see all those guys, Bob Madison, all the Southside, the St. Mary's guys. I see all those guys. And then on the north side, we had Mike Seary and Joe Ham and Pat Leahy and, a bunch of Chuck Zarumsky. Those were north side guys. So they created an environment that was really created a solid kind of team environment. Now, also at that time, you could sub in and sub out.
Yeah.
So they were able to do that, I think, by expanding the 11-man on the field to maybe 13 or 14, where a lot of guys played a lot, So we were able to not have the kind of animosities that might build up if somebody thinks they should be playing and they're not playing.
So as an individual player, that 73 season, you win the national championship, you win the Hermann, you get the MVP of the Senior Bowl. At what point in that process are you thinking, or are you planning, or are you hoping that you want to go to the next level? Because you end up having a 10-year career as a pro, but there's a point in college where that starts to manifest itself. What was that for you?
You know what? I can't tell you when, but it was in my head, and it's such that when I picked my schedule for classes, I took a heavy schedule most of the time so that I knew the last semester I wouldn't be held up if I wanted to get out early to go to the draft, to the NASL draft.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So, I left like in February of that year.
Yep.
I wasn't there for my graduation and all that. I was in Boston where I got drafted. I was there. And so I kind of hoped it. And at that time, there were a lot of St. Louis players that were playing, at the Stars and different places. So I thought that I would get a chance. I don't know if I was good enough, but I thought that I'd get a chance somewhere. And I didn't want them to say, well, we need you to come in February, but you're not graduating until May. So you'll have to come in later or the next year even,
Yeah.
So I planned my schedule, academic schedule such that I would get enough credits that I could graduate one semester early.
Yep.
Or what I did, I think I had one class in the spring semester to graduate, and they let me take it, away from the campus. So.
Let me ask a quick follow-up question about these opportunities in the decision making, and I want to go back to your family, your parents, because I think without knowing, your family story or what they did or et cetera, so many stories in this marketplace are about just blue-collar families that that couldn't afford college, right? And all players like yourself, you guys all grinded it on your own. And there would have been an exciting moment in which I'm sure all parents were super proud, happy, crying maybe whenever you commit SLU. But then when you get drafted into the NASL and you're going to Boston to actually get paid to play the game you love,
Right.
Take a second and let us know, like, what was your family reaction to, oh my God, you're going to go to SLU, you're going to get a degree, you're going to be an adult. And then, oh my God, you just got drafted to play pro soccer and get paid to play.
Right.
What was that like?
Oh, it was like a dream. You know, you can imagine if you're a young kid and your dream is to play professional in any sport and you get the opportunity, it all kind of came together, you know. But I remember my first contract, I made $1,000 a month and I got a car and an apartment. And that was it.
Living large.
I thought I was at the top of the heap.
So that means you had $900 a month for beers.
The what?
You had $900 a month for beers. $100
Yeah,
for all
that's
the
right.
because you had a car and apartment.
The beers always seem to flow. You know, and I used to say that when we were at St. Louis U later on, not that many years after we got out of St. Louis U, I used to say to the guys, you know, that I played with, you know, we'd get together frequently. And I said, and I think Joe was coaching then, Joe Clark.
Yeah.
And I said to, if Harry and Val were coaching today, they'd be in jail because, you know, it got really strict about drinking. And,
yeah.
Well,
and it is today as well because there's so much liability.
And they were strict about it too, but I think they knew they couldn't corral us, you know, that we'd be, you know, who's having the party after the game was over. It was always like, where's the party?
Yeah.
You know, who's having the party?
I think what's interesting, and we'll go through your career here, but JB had mentioned journeyman. And of course you were drafted in Boston. And what I think the thing that sticks out to me is, so you start in Boston, then the next year you're all the way across the country, 3,000 miles away in San Jose. Right. And then you're 2,000 miles away in San Antonio. And then you're out in Hawaii, and then you're back in California, then you're back on the East Coast, then you're in Canada. That's really interesting to me, coming from North County, Parish, and then staying home and playing SLU, and then the miles you traveled in the first 7-8 years of your career is like, talk about that a little bit. I mean, was that a culture shock?
Well, no, it was actually, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder.
Okay.
I can admit that today, that I was not happy about the opportunity that Americans were getting. You know, now they got them at the Stars, right? Because we had all Americans there. But when you went on another team, you were really just at that time, you had the rule was you had to have one American on the field in the NASL.
Yeah. And then it ballooned to 3, right?
Yeah. And then it went to 3, but that was that's all you ever hardly saw was one American on the field.
Yeah.
And I knew that some of the Americans that played on teams with me were good enough. They should have been playing, but they weren't. It was always the foreign player getting the, you know, the advantage. And so I was constantly pushing for those opportunities for the American players. Now, frequently I was the guy that got to play. So it wasn't you know, my eagerness to want to get in the lineup. I was playing, but there were guys next to me that were, I thought, as good as me. They should be playing too. And why weren't they, you know? And so I kind of had a little bit of a, like I said, a little edge about that. And so what happened in all those changes that you mentioned, I'm not so proud of it because it was, the joke was that Counce has more clubs than Arnold Palmer.
Well, what was your favorite place? Let me ask you that. Like, where was your favorite stopping point? What city did you really embrace?
I mean, I'm looking at the list, and I mean, God was shining down on you because it's like surf or ski, Kush.
I liked all of the places, actually, equally. I think. I mean, I really enjoyed, and they were at different stages of my career a little bit too, so that affected them. You know, like Boston was a real young city. You know, lots of single people, and, you know, and it was an exciting city. So that was fun, you know, but, you know, I had things happen during those times. Like I won the Hermann Trophy. And at that time, nobody knew hardly even what the Hermann Trophy was, but I'm in Boston, and we had a pretty decent team, and we trained at Boston College. I had a nice apartment. I was enjoying myself there. And then I get this message that I win the Hermann Trophy, and I have to go to Manhattan for like a luncheon, media luncheon banquet kind of thing, and at Mama Leone's, which was the kind of the spot for that kind of stuff in Manhattan at that time. So I go to the coach, was Hubert Volgenstein, and I says, Hubert, I got to go to New York on Wednesday or whatever it was for this luncheon for the Hermann Trophy thing. And he was like, he wasn't happy about it. That was going to miss practice. And I said, but I got to go. The league says I got to go. And at that time, they had shuttle buses or shuttle flights from Boston to New York, like maybe every half hour almost, So I paid for myself. I hopped on a plane. I flew to Manhattan, jumped in a taxi, got to Mama Leone's, had the banquet, gave a little, probably not such a good speech, but gave a little speech, and then left, got in the taxi, went back to the airport, jumped on a plane, flew back to Boston, made it for the afternoon practice at Boston College, got there, and the team was already on the field, and they were all sitting down, and Hubert was telling the players about this and about that. And we had some really good English players there, but they got the high-end apartments, they got the big cars, they got all that stuff. And they were not listening to the discipline of Hubert so well. And he wanted to discipline them, but he was afraid to. So I come onto the field and he goes, Counce, you're late. And I'm thinking, I'm late. You know what I did to make it so that I could make this practice? Right. In my mind, I'm saying, are you crazy? He says, you're late. I'm going to fine you. And at that time, it was $1,000 a month, right? And I don't know, it was like $500 or something like that. And I said in front of the whole team, which was not nice, I said, you don't pay me enough money to fine me. And, this was, I'm not proud of this, but it did happen. And I said, so, basically shove the fine up your butt.
Yeah, San Jose, here I come.
Yeah, what he was really doing, he was trying to tell the foreign guys, if you don't start showing up at time for practice, this could happen to you. When really, I was there always early, ready to go.
Yeah,
but he didn't want to attack them directly because it would have been tough. They were our key players, at that time. So it was stuff like that I would lose my temper on a little bit as a young guy.
You should have just told him, say, hey, look, sir, I'm from the north side of St. Louis. Are you sure you want to do this?
Right. Well, and then that same year, we're playing in Baltimore against the Baltimore Comets. And you probably know a little bit about the Howard University, St. Louis University rivalry of those times and that kind of thing. Well, Lincoln Phillips, the coach of Howard University, was also the starting goalkeeper for the Baltimore Comets. And we're playing the Baltimore Comets in Memorial Stadium in Baltimore, and a long ball comes into the box, and I go rushing in, and I go up to head it. And if I just get a touch on it, it's going to be a goal because the keeper's coming out, and he's not going to get there.
Yep.
And it's going to be a goal. So I'm thinking I'm going to get it. And then when I got up there, I thought, Dan, this wasn't a smart decision. He hits me, breaks my cheekbone, and I'm unconscious. They take me out of the stadium to the hospital, unconscious, and I forgot. Oh, and then so what happened, the team was going to play the Cosmos and the next day flying from Baltimore to New York, and I'm in the hospital. I don't talk to an official from the team. Nobody tells me anything. I'm laying in the hospital bed thinking, what's going on?
What was that
and
fine
I put
for
my
missing
hand
the
up
trip?
on my face, and I had a big hole in the side of my face.
Holy shit.
And I'm thinking, shit, Dan, you're hurt, and I was kind of dizzy and all that. So anyway, I'll try to make this faster. But the thing that happened was, a nurse comes in and says the doctor's going to come in a little while, and the brain specialist is going to come in. I said, who? What? She says the brain specialist. I said, what do you mean brain specialist? She said they got to check you out before we can operate or do anything. And I guess I was saying the whole time during this, whatever you got to do, fix it now. I was just, all I could think about is I don't want to kind of get up and have to think about I got surgery coming on.
Yeah.
So they did that. And then the doctor comes in, and he actually graduated from Wash U and did his internship or something at Barnes Hospital. And he comes in and says, "Mr. Counce," he was an ethnic guy. And he says, we're going to shave your head and cut along this side of your face where your cheekbone is. We're going to go in, we're going to pull the bone back down, and everything's going to be good. And I said, "You're going to do what?" And he says, "We're going to shave your head." And all I heard was "shave your head." I didn't even hear the rest of it. And I just said, "Can I be moved?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Cancel everything." They said, "What?" I said, "Cancel. You're not doing it. Cancel it." And I called the hotel. The team's packing up, getting ready to leave to go to New York. I don't know if they were going to leave me there or what they were going to do. And I said, "I'm going to hop in a taxi." And I called my roommate. I said, "Pack up my bags. I'm coming to the hotel. I'm going to go to the airport with you guys." So I'm, broken cheek. Now my head was swollen up on that side. And I go to the airport, and I book a flight, my own money. I book a flight to St. Louis. And they take off and go to New York, and I go to St. Louis, and I go to Barnes Hospital, and they fixed it there. And they went in through my mouth, believe it or not, between my cheek and my teeth, went in, fixed the bone, pulled it all back down. Everything was good. Took me, a few weeks, 3-4 weeks before I was back playing.
3-4 weeks
back playing. And I'm thinking, do I want to play for this organization? With the way things have gone. And I didn't want to. So I knew at that time that there were teams interested in me, San Jose, Seattle, and a couple other teams. So I pushed it. I pushed the envelope, and I thought I was going to go to Seattle, and I ended up going to San Jose.
So let's talk a little bit about the you spent 10 years pro. Looks like roughly a little over half was close to half was outdoor. The other half was indoor. This is at a time in which,
right.
We've talked about it a lot on the show. We've had a lot of your peers and other players from the league. NASL was on the down. It was starting to slide.
Right, it was.
Teams are going bankrupt, right? And indoor started to kind of become this replacement theory option. For you as a player who had spent your whole career, your whole life outdoors, 11v11 on the big, what was that transition like for you? Were you excited about it? Were you a little disappointed in that was the next best option? What was that like for you?
Well, I was excited about it because I had grown up, as we said, playing hock sock.
Yeah.
And I said, this is hock sock. That's all it is. And you touch the ball so much more, and you get so many more chances, and you're more involved in the overall game indoor, right? And so I was excited about it. And at that time, the NASL had a strike, and I was a player rep for the California Surf, and Al Trost was the other player rep for the California Surf. And we were, that was outdoors. And what happened, the California Surf cut me just out of the blue. "Dan, see you later." Boom, you're gone. And nobody wanted to touch me because I was like, the union organizer kind of guy.
Yeah.
And they didn't come calling. And then Al got traded to Seattle. If you wonder why, that's how Al ended up in Seattle playing outdoor. Al Trost is because they either moved the player rep to another team or they cut him. So they cut me, and nobody was interested in me. And then I went to, except for this new indoor league started, and the Philadelphia team, Philadelphia Fever, called and said, "Hey, Dan, you want to play indoor?" And I said, "Sure. I got nothing going right now." And they said, "Well, we'd like to have you." So I went to Philadelphia and played the very first season of the Major Indoor Soccer League in Philadelphia, and I liked it. And it was good, but I'm thinking, how am I going to make money? Is my soccer career over?
Yeah.
And then I got a call from Toronto, which was the North American Soccer League in Toronto. And one of the assistant coaches there was a guy who played with me when we were in Hawaii. Charlie Mitchell was his name. And Charlie calls, "Hey, Dan, you want to come to Toronto?" And I said, "Yeah, but you know what's going on." He goes, "Well, we're not affected by that. The Canadian teams, there was no animosity with the players and the management because they had to go along with whatever the labor dispute was going to be settled in the United States. The Canadian teams were just bystanders until they made a decision on what they were going to do." So he says, "You can come up here. We'll bring you up here." I said, "Oh, that would be great." I said, "When the indoor season's over," he says, "Well, can you come we're going to do our preseason in Florida. So can you come down to Florida and the coach will look at you. I've recommended you, but he wants to see you. And if he sees you, we'd like to sign you. And if he likes what he sees." So I said, I'm coming. I'll be there. So they sent me a ticket. I flew to Florida. It was in the spring, and we were playing, training, and everything's going pretty well. And then we had like a friendly game with like some semi-pro team in Florida or some team from down in Florida. And so we're playing the game like at a little high school stadium. And about 20 minutes into the first half, the coach says, "Counce, you want to go in?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." So he says, "Go in." So I went in. I scored 2 goals by luck.
Yeah.
By luck.
Sign me.
Yeah.
Show me the money.
Yeah. So I scored 2 goals. After the game, they said, "We want to sign you. So go back to Philly, get all your stuff, get it all packed up. Let's get the contract worked out, and then come up to Toronto, and we'll be heading back from Florida. We'll meet you in Toronto." So then I played indoor and outdoor for a few years.
Yeah.
The off season I would go indoor, and the outdoor season I'd go outdoor.
So you've had your career is storied. 3 national championships we've already talked about. Hermann Trophy, MVP of senior. You had 10 years of pro, indoor, outdoor. You scored a lot of goals. But then there's another accolade that's kind of in your playing life that we haven't touched on yet until now, and that is you got to represent your country. Right. You had 5 caps. Take a second and put that in perspective. What did that mean for you as a player? In adding that to the list of things you have already accomplished.
Right. Well, that's one of the greatest honors I had. One of the things, though, that back then we played a lot more games at that time, but you didn't get a cap for the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we'd play, the national team would play, some semi-pro team or some other team, but you never got a cap for those. So I only had 5 games where they were officially counted as national team games.
Yeah.
But if you got any Olympic athletes on there, or you've ever had that experience to stand with your team on the field and they play the national anthem, you can't help but feel proud.
Yeah.
At that moment in time. And so I felt great, and I felt that it was a reward for a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication to the game. And there were a lot of my guys I looked up to in my life that did that played on the national team.
So let me.
It was a really exciting time, and but we didn't train. We would go on a trip to Europe.
Yeah.
For preseason in February, and we'd train for like a day and a half in some high school field in New Jersey, and then we'd be playing 2 days later against the Polish national team or some big team or against an Italian national team.
So let me ask you a desert island style question here, and then we want to move into your professional career, kind of when you put on a suit and tie in the game. But I want to ask you desert island scenario here. Because you have an incredible list of accolades. You get to take one. Pick the one. Is it a national championship? If so, which year? Was it the Hermann? Was it the MVP? Was it getting drafted? Was it a particular goal game in the pros? Was it a cap game? What is your Mount Everest moment? And was
it a player?
Was it a high school game? Was it a North South match? What's your your desert island memory?
Yeah, I won an MISL championship with Baltimore. We beat St. Louis, actually, by the way. We won that.
This is a St. Louis podcast. Great. We don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. And that was great, though. That was fun. And then, I went to the semifinals when Boston, I think we went to the semifinals in the North American Soccer League. That was fun. And then there were many, many, many other moments. But the best moments of my soccer career was really at St. Louis U. It was the games at St. Louis U playing with those players.
That's cool.
Basically, we felt like we were carrying the banner for American soccer players. We felt like, because every team we played against were made up of mainly foreigners.
Yeah.
In the United States, all the teams were foreign players.
Other than SIU and Michigan State.
except SIU. We never played against Michigan State while I was in school,
really?
By the way. But they had a bunch of Americans. But you know what the rest of their team was made up of? Foreigners.
Yep.
So, but SIU was SIU, Quincy, like those moments when we would beat Quincy, Rockhurst.
Yep.
SIU. Those were big moments, and those were most of the toughest games that we faced.
Did you guys pull like 2 or 3 players off the field when you played Rockhurst? The Kansas City kids.
Yeah, well, sometimes the wind would blow the ball in.
Yeah.
Which one of you guys is from Rockhurst?
Nobody.
No.
Here's where we're going next. Because I think we need to touch on it because you're an avid fan, and you still follow the game, and you have many relationships within the game because of where the game's brought you. The interesting thing that I think here in your professional career, and I know you were in the MISL board of directors and whatnot, which that was probably really exciting in those times.
Yeah,
but the GM role, when the league basically first starts, a year after it starts, you basically lead the Rapids for a 5-6 year period as this league is getting going, and you see what the league is at now, and the revenues and the teams and the soccer-specific stadiums. Can you talk about those times early on when you were the actual general manager for a brand new professional soccer league, kind of full circle when you played in the NASL, and then we have no league, and then now we're in the MLS. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, well, I think my favorite time not playing was definitely in Denver, and that Phil Anschutz, the owner of the Denver team, was the best owner that I had ever worked for, and the most
passionate.
He was the kind of guy, he selected people to do certain tasks, and then he got out of the way. You know what I mean? He picked you because he felt that you were the person to make this, whatever it was, happen. And he was good at that. And I really enjoyed my years with the Rapids the most, and that was when Phil Anschutz owned the team. The team is now currently owned by Kroenke.
Well, can we stop? Can we stop right there? Because we don't use the word, and I've been taught not to use the word hate, but this is a St. Louis podcast, and coincidentally, you kind of are removed from the scene or stepped down voluntarily, however the story goes, which we're about to find out. But why do you hate Stan Kroenke?
Well, yeah, he wasn't. I don't know where he is now, but when he took over the Rapids, he was not, or I felt he was not interested in the game. He was interested in what owning of the team and the stadium and building the stadium, what that was going to do to, I think, his real estate.
Sure. It's a business
side of his business.
Yeah, clearly.
Around that stadium. So I had and I was with him for 1 year. I was he owned it for 1 year and I was still there. And, but the handwriting was on the wall that they felt they didn't need me and that they had all the pieces to the puzzle that they needed. And, I was not included in that.
Okay.
So it was hard to say, and I didn't have that much contact with him. Where with Anschutz, I had a lot more contact, but he has done well with it. And I was part of the group when building the initial stadium in Denver, and they did a really good job of that. And they did it on a budget, and I was kind of in back of my mind thinking, if they're doing it this way, it's not going to work out well. But it has, and it's a good stadium, and it was a nice stadium for where the league was at that time, and I think he did it right. But they did it a little bit, I don't know, a little bit not as at the level of what I would have liked to have seen happen at that time. But anyway, but Kroenke, I didn't have much contact with him, so I didn't really know him very well. And I didn't, but I just sensed by his actions that they didn't really care about the soccer. Example, they thought, well, hockey's over, and in the summer soccer's going on, so the hockey people can come over and run the soccer team.
Yeah.
That was kind of his thinking at that time. I think he learned over time that wasn't going to work.
So let me ask you about a particular year, a particular team, because I was just kind of, I was curious because I was listening to you, talk passionately about the presence and the role of American players in the NASL, your role as a union rep, et cetera. And then once you move to the front office and you have the ability, you got the keys to the car. You're playing a critical role in building these teams, the coaching staff and the players, right? And I'm looking at the 1997 final and the game between DC United and you guys, and obviously, unfortunately, you came up on the other side of the result. But I'm looking at the roster and the lineup, and DC United. Well, let me go to DC United first. I mean, the American names that were on that team were very clearly some of the biggest: John Harkes, Tony Sena, Jeff Agoose, etc. But they had 6 players that were American players. The rest were internationals. Your squad was all Americans except for David Patino, and Marcelo Balboa, Peter Vermees, Steve Trittschuh, Granite City's own, right? There we go.
Right.
We got another shout out.
Granite City.
Like, it looks as if, knowing what I know now, based on our last 40 minutes of hanging out,
right?
You put a fingerprint on this team. Am I reading that accurately?
Well, I did, but not as big as some general managers might or think they might be capable of doing. Glenn Meyernick was our coach at that time, and Glenn was a good friend of mine. And I think Glenn might be a Hermann Trophy winner too. I don't remember, but anyway, he was, and his nickname was Mooch, and Mooch was a very, very good coach, and I think I have to give the bulk of the credit for us getting to the final that year to him. Although I
who built the roster?
Say, and
did you build the roster?
Input. Go ahead.
Did you build the roster? Who built the roster?
He built the roster.
Okay.
But I would, it would be, Dan, I want to get this guy. I need the money to get this guy, and I'd say we can't get that guy. And then he would go for and some of that was money. And some of that was maybe my disagreement with that guy was going to be the answer for our team. So there was some of that back and forth, but I would give the praise mainly to Mooch on that, because I was also a believer that, like Anschutz, that if I hire a coach, I want him to coach.
Yep.
And I want him to have players that he feels he needs and can coach. So unless I had a big objection to a certain player for some reason, if he wanted a player and I didn't think the player was the answer, but he really wanted him, I would go get him.
So
I would make it happen.
So let me ask this, and then we're kind of getting close to dinner time.
For you guys.
Yeah, right. We're at 30 years. 30 years in of MLS.
Right.
The league has an explosion of new franchises. We have soccer-specific stadiums that are beautiful. Like ours, right down the road here. You have Messi in the league, right?
Right.
And it's not that we haven't had great international players in the league previously, but Messi's different. Messi's a different level, especially at this point.
Right.
When you think back to the early years of Anschutz and the rest of the crews, in 8 teams or 9 teams, 10 teams, when it was small,
Right.
Columbus is playing in kind of a glorified kind of college stadium, right? And then here in 2026, 30 teams, soccer specific everywhere, in the heart of major metro urban areas,
Right.
and the quality of the play, et cetera. How does that make you feel, knowing that you were not a founder, but you were one of the foundational
I
faces?
played a little part, like a lot of people did at that time.
And the second part of the question is really, you saw what happened firsthand in the NASL. You saw up close why it didn't work. So when you think about that and you look at MLS today, how does that make you feel?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm very proud of what they've continued to do and build the league, and I think the league seems to be on the right track. I'm sure there's some things that I don't agree with them on totally, but I think they're doing a heck of a job, and soccer has elevated its position in the marketplace, I think, by a lot. From when I was really involved a lot, we had to do everything. And we had to, try to make something happen where there wasn't anything happening, and so it was very, very difficult. And now I think like you just mentioned, Messi, back then, with the exception of Pelé, if you'd have brought the next best player in the world into San Antonio when I was there, the crowds wouldn't have even increased. They wouldn't have known who he was. So now I think player quality and player names and player exposure is a far more valuable asset than it was back then. I remember in Denver at one point having the PA announcer in the stadium, and a lot of people got upset by this, actually calling out the players' names at different times. So like if we had the ball and Trichu's got the ball, Trichu plays it to Balboa. Balboa plays it to
Henderson,
Paul Bravo,
to
Chris Henderson.
Yeah.
And I did that because nobody knew who they were.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
But the traditionalists didn't like it. But there wasn't that many traditionalists that were coming anyway. So.
Well, if we're talking about traditionalists, and you mentioned the players, and they had me on the show for the hard-hitting questions.
Right.
And we talked about your 1997 team, and we've had both of these gentlemen on the show, and they're both friends of the show, and we love them very much. If you could take one desert island haircut, Marcelo Balboa's long locks or Steve Trichu's 1997 mullet Granite City style, which one are you taking?
Oh boy,
because those are dynamic hairdos.
Well, I think the mullet is really more says something about the individual, And so I think Tritt styled a pretty nice mullet there.
Yeah.
But Marcelo's got, he's fortunate. He's got great hair.
Still.
He's got it all stitched in, and it's all looking nice.
Stitched in.
Whatever haircut he'd go for.
So you say he's like Landon?
Landon. That's kind of spooky. That's kind of spooky. Landon's hair. But those are all great. Those were all great players. Those guys, by the way, and a lot of those guys sometimes that we didn't see eye to eye, but they were all. You mentioned before about the contribution to the league. I mean, there are tons of people that contributed to this where soccer is today. And sometimes I look back on the Pat McBride era and those guys and the early stars and that, and think about how those guys, what they did when we look back on it, was an important, very important thing, and that they maintained the visibility and the life that there was pro soccer of some type here, and the same thing with indoor, all of that, those people all contributed tremendously, and a lot of them sacrificed personally because there was no money in it. Nobody was playing because of the money. Now, I wish I was a GM right now. Wouldn't be talking to you guys.
Yeah, you would.
Oh,
Yeah,
you'd be
Well,
blowing up our phone.
hey,
Like, we
Danny,
got to be on that show.
In
Yeah,
closing
that's
for
right.
me,
No, I take that back. You're right. I would be doing that. I'd be saying, you guys got to get me on that show.
Right?
yeah.
Right.
So in closing for me, thanks for coming on. I know you're a huge name, and you're one of the big reasons why St. Louis soccer is so successful. I have one last question.
Yeah.
And I know some of the places are probably closed since you actually lived here. But if you make it through St. Louis, where are you going to eat your meal at? Like if you had to go one place in St. Louis, what's the name of the place? And we'll see if it's still open.
Well, I got to have an Emo's pizza. I got to have some toasted ravioli from someplace. I got to have these places aren't even around. Well, Emo's is still around.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, Emo's is still around. People don't understand Emo's out here. They don't know. They don't understand it.
They don't get it.
No, they don't get it.
I don't think Provel melts the same at mile high elevation.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe the temperature. That's right. They got to go at a higher temp.
Yeah,
or lower
right.
temp. I don't know which, but I'd have to do Emo's pizza, I think, and I'd have to do some toasted ravioli. St. Louis is a great bar food place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's where you got to have a beer, you know, and
I'm gonna try
something
that. I'm gonna try bar
greasy
food.
and something spicy.
Yeah, well, I'm going to introduce Jared to bar food when we get off the call here today.
Yeah,
Like you've never been there. Hey, well, Dan, this has been a real pleasure. We really love having individuals like yourself come on the show, tell these stories because you know we're at 200 and what are we 75?
Yeah, you
plus?
guys got you've talked to a lot of people. You've covered the landscape. I saw that pretty well.
Yeah,
And I know many of those guys, and like I said, they were all contributors.
Well,
people all contributed something.
What I love about it is like you know it's not like you guys call each other before you talk to us, and what we hear is the same kind of passion and loyalty to the neighborhoods, to the communities. Yeah. We were so blessed to be able to have Pat McBride on, you know, shortly, not long before he passed away, right? So to be able to hear him say, he talked about this landscape, not identically, but almost exactly like you did, you know, and that says something because you guys were all part of big reason why there's 4,500 kids out at Scott Gallagher, you know, of a weekend, and, and 4,000 out of Fuse, and like it's in our blood here, and it's in large part to a whole bunch of.
Well, that's one of the things that kind of like disappointed me a little bit recently, in that the national team didn't have anybody from St. Louis on it.
Rare.
The men's team.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why? What's going on? You know, how did that happen? You know? And I think, you know, St. Louis, even though we lived it and we were proud of it and connected to it, it was overlooked over the years a lot from the coast, you know, from the East Coast, West Coast. You know, those players seem to get a little more recognition, or, you know, their name seems to pop up a little more. So I'm hoping that maybe there'll be a St. Louis guy squeeze in somewhere along the line.
We reload every day, so we'll be back. We know how that goes,
right? Well, and then I am happy to see that Kansas City is kind of coming up compared to St. Louis.
I mean, they running water and power. I'll give them credit.
I used to tell the Southside guys they wouldn't have any water in South St. Louis if we didn't flush our toilets.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I tell you what, that is a perfect place. We will end on that one. That's a sound bite for the ages.
I hope you don't get a lot of, or I hope I don't get a lot of bad mail on that one.
Oh, I guarantee by the time this is released, you're going to get some text messages. So,
all right.
Dan, thank you very much for joining us.
Listen, I appreciate what you guys are doing for the game. I think this is a great vehicle to get the people talking about it, and a place for people to vent some of their dislikes and likes. And I think keep it up. I hope it becomes if it can become a lot more successful. I hope it does, and I hope you guys, you know, have a great time doing it.
We do. Well, thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate your time. Jared Bertrand, well done today. Appreciate your time as well, sir. Yeah. And for those of you that made it this far, and there's a lot of you, we know that. You love us. Thanks for listening. Like, review, follow, share. It's all free. Until next time, we are out of here.